2016 Personnel Finance Committee to order. I need approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Move on to item 3, public comment. Is there any public comment that wishes to step forward and talk? No public comment. We'll move on to item 4, committee items. Item A is we need a motion support to pass the minutes from July 18th, 2015. Motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Thank you. Move to item 4B, Department of Aging. Welcome, Marcy. Marcy's going to put in a request for position change.
Good morning.
Morning.
For the Department on Aging, the request is to change a full-time grade 2 position, that a person who works in the kitchen, it's a stock person, custodial, to a full-time grade 3, and include with those job duties, the person could cook when the need is there for another person to cook. For example, if more than one cook is gone for the day on time off. And I included with the request the diagrams that show some graphs that show the increase in meals that have been prepared. Right now, we're averaging 1,270 meals a day between our Meals on Wheels and Congregate program. And we did try to go with a part-time position instead of a full-time position when we had someone retire in October of 2014. But we find now our meal count is increasing, and we really need a person full-time, and to have someone in a position that could primarily be a stock person, custodial, but yet be able to cook. That flexibility would really help in getting the meals prepared. So there's also a budget adjustment that shows it could cover the cost for the increase. And the annual cost increase to go from a grade 2 to a grade 3, from part-time to full-time, is $20,750 more a year. We do have additional revenue through the PACE Center on Springport Road, and we expect that revenue in 2017 will be $48,000. And of course, we'll have to use some of that money for food to pay for the meals that are going to the PACE Center, which is a location where people who are Medicare, Medicaid eligible and need a lot of medical assistance, they go there for all their medical appointments, and then we are providing lunches. That's the PACE Center, and that's some of our additional meals are through that, but also revenue that is coming in, and that has been steadily increasing as they serve more participants. Any questions about the request?
Commissioner Elwell.
Marcy, just that split on that revenue coming in, is that going to fully offset what you're talking about here, do you think, or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Further discussion? We have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the work you do. Moving on to item 4C, facilities. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. You have before you a request to renew the lease for the Rise Above services at 936 Fleming Street. Without going through the staff report, I can say these folks have done a great job. They've really helped the community by keeping as many of these juveniles as possible out of the system.
Thank you. Commissioner Elwell.
Rick, I think the only changes I saw on it were it's a 2-year lease, and it's going from a 30-day out to a 120-day out. Is that
Correct.
Accurate? Is there, of course, you know that we every month talk about the potential of 17-year-olds being considered juveniles for prosecutions. Is there any chance we would use any of that facility if we end up with an increased population?
No, it's totally
Because of the build
unsuitable.
of the building or what?
It would be totally unsuitable just from the fact that it was a detention center designed in 1930 that nowadays isn't even close to code for housing juveniles.
When was the last time we housed juveniles there, if you know?
Oh
Long
my
time.
gosh. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, it's been so long.
Thank you.
Saying aye? Aye. Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick. Next up, we have JCDOT. Welcome.
Morning. I'll let Jim provide an overview of what you have in front of you. I'm going to load the presentation I gave last month in case there are questions. Don't plan to go through it.
Welcome, Jim.
I think you have to go to the side of the monitor, or no, you're all set.
Just give him a shove, he'll tip over.
There you go.
Yeah, what we're asking for here is approval of a resolution, and the resolution serves two purposes. One, it serves as notice of intent to issue the bonds, and these are capital improvement bonds that require the full faith and credit of the county. Therefore, we have to have the 45-day notice of intent to issue the bonds. Doesn't mean we have to do it within the 45, or after the 45 days, but it does start the clock running. If you recall, the prior bond issues that we've had is that we have to publish in the newspaper and meet certain specifications to start that process. Secondly, the resolution allows reimbursement of any expenses incurred starting 60 days prior to the board meeting for which it'll be approved. And that would include any expenses incurred 60 days prior to the resolution approval by the board, and also any expenses incurred thereafter up until the time the bonds are actually sold. So in terms of the purpose of the bond issue and so forth, then I'll defer that information for Chris here to answer your questions.
On the purpose.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. The primary purpose of our bond issue, as you recall from last month's presentation, is to catch up on our failing road conditions. We did an analysis where if you pay as you go, and we use next year's uptick of revenues, and I'll go ahead and slide to that slide here. I think it's slide 14. Here we go. You might remember this graphic, which shows our 5-year revenue projections based on the new road funding bill. You'll see right here in the center, 2017, which is next year, we see the first allocation, which is $2.68 million projected. That's a 24.1% increase. And if you just held that amount level into the future, that's kind of our goal, is just take that and hold it level. That gives us over a 15-year issue based on the debt service analysis that we've completed. That's basically the debt payment on this. So we're taking the first year's injection of new money, which is gas tax and license fees, and just holding that level. If we do nothing and we just go with status quo, you might recall that our PACER rating, average PACER rating, does not change. It basically stays stagnant, and that's later in this presentation. So.
Questions, board? Commissioner Elwell?
Chris, just to clarify one thing Jim said, or maybe Jim can. So if we approve this, we can include as eligible expenses anything 60 days prior to the resolution, right? And I think, if I heard you right, you said, and any expenses incurred up until the time the bonds are sold.
Correct.
Okay, and then after the bonds are sold, then it's our pot of money essentially to do what we want with it, okay?
You can basically pay yourself back after the bonds are sold for anything we're incurring now.
Okay. And the length of the bonds is a 15-year bond?
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's what we're proposing based on the life cycle of the various assets being funded. Some of the improvements will last longer, 20 years plus. Overlays, reconstructs of road will be even longer. But yeah, we're trying to be conservative, pay it off as soon as we can.
And the anticipated interest is about, what, 2.5% or so on the bonds?
Yeah, I think they
Ballpark right now.
performed illustrations high and low, but that is about what we're expecting, 2.5%. Is that right, Jim?
Yes, that's correct. And the last bond issue that we just received the proceeds on last week, the effective interest rate was 2.3%.
Okay.
So,
The upside is that we can start our work before other communities or counties maybe are, while they're waiting for their money, correct? That's the upside.
Right.
And the downside, one of them is if the funds are not available, correct? But you're confident you're using the baseline in the first, I can't quite see it from here, but is it 2017 you're using as a baseline?
Correct, only 2017, none of the future monies. And the red line with the red X's, that's that questionable state appropriation piece. We're not including that in any analysis at all. That'd be bonus money if that came in. That doesn't even come into play till 2019.
So the red line is not the baseline that we're talking about, it is, okay?
Below the red line is the baseline that we know we're receiving.
And the dark blue boxes are the current level of funding?
Correct.
And what's the difference between those two? Ballpark, I can't see them from here.
2.7 million here, and then in 2018, it goes up to 3.5 million, 3.5 to 3.6 million. And so we know we're going to receive that, and then after 2021, it's hitched to inflation.
Okay. So then, as we get that revenue in every year, we use that to pay towards the bonds and towards the interest?
Correct.
Okay. And we think there's just no chance that that revenue stream is ever going to drop below what we need to pay the bonds? Accurate?
Well, I continue to talk with the County Road Association, who are closely in conversations with legislators. It would take an act of law to change it, because the recent legislation mandated this. So this is the constitutionally protected portion that has the gas tax and vehicle registration fee increases in it. So it would take a change of law. We can never say for sure what the legislature will do, but all indications are there's no motivation whatsoever at this point in time to change that law. Everybody's looking forward to it, counting on it, agencies are planning on it, staffing up for it, letting projects, bidding, etc. So it'd be a huge political windstorm if that were to change.
Okay. And I guess just one last point of clarification or question. So the solid blue lines are what we've been receiving up until now every year for the MTF funds, correct?
Yes.
And we've used that not just for replacement of bad roads, but really to fully fund the operation of the road department, correct?
Correct.
So it's just a portion of that we're going to use then for this. That money still has to fund all the other operations of the road department. And on top of that, these other additional road improvements we're talking about.
Correct.
And you've analyzed those numbers and you think we're in good position to do all that.
Correct. I can tell you that out of that blue bar, if you can imagine a baseline down here, down low, I don't know if you can see that, but if you can imagine between $2 to $5 million every year that we spend on patching roads right now, that's the bleeding that we're trying to end, or at least start to bring to closure. The problem is the patching we're having to do is going up every year because the roads are falling apart faster than we can fix them. So an initiative like this would start to halt that process. We're doing something different. We're fixing roads, and all the crews we're allocating to this 130 to 160 miles of roads can be, and that's the 20% of roads that are taking 80% of our time. We're trying to get our crews off of them. So we'll have some operational savings that we can reallocate, is what I'm trying to say, because we're wasting a lot of time and energy patching.
And I do support all that. I just am awful apprehensive to borrow money based on future income unless we're very certain that it's going to be there at least through the length of the bond. So approximately 160 miles of roads, and how many miles of roads do we actually have in the county that we have to take care of?
Out of primary roads, we have 500 and some, and this is what the primary focus of this issue would be, on the county's responsibility for county primary roads. However, the language is written with some flexibility to allow matching on local road projects, should we need to use it.
Which would be the 70/30?
Correct, that'd be
Yeah.
our 30%, is what that is. Total miles of road hovers around, I think, 1,500 plus, and not including the state maintenance contract.
Thank you. That's miles.
That's miles.
Miles of roads.
Yeah.
The 1,500 is inclusive of everything, correct?
Right, I think,
It doesn't include the gravels.
does not include the gravels. Do you know the total mileage certified?
It's just a hair over 1,700.
Yeah, 1,700 certified miles, local and primary.
And that is inclusive of dirt roads or not? The 17
Yes.
17 does, yeah, 1,500 is paved.
paved? Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
And we continue to work with our townships on the local piece of this, so.
Just lastly, I'll say that I'll probably support voting on it here to send it to the full board, but I may have more questions when it gets to the board, and I think it's a good idea to put as much information out there for the public as we can, and I know a lot of this has already been compiled, but I think we need to continue to educate the public on what we're doing, because we're obligating them to the tune of $30 million, so.
Commissioner Alexander.
My question is for either Mike or Jim. What is the maximum amount of bond debt that the county can incur?
Around 200 million, I believe, is what we have remaining. Would it be about right, Jim?
Yeah, that's correct. It's really, what is that, 10% of our total assessed valuation, so it's a very high number. Is our legal limit.
And Mike, you just said, I missed part of what you said, you pulled back. 200 million is remaining?
My understanding is you subtract out what we already have in debt, and we still have around 200 million left that we could borrow. That's the 10% legal limit.
And that includes our SRI debt, obviously, correct?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
taken
All
out,
of our debt, we've obligated.
all right.
If I could, Phil,
Yes, sir. Mr.
that
Chairman.
includes all bond debt, Julie, going back to all the other sewer projects also that are going on within the county, that the county's put up its full faith and credit, not just SRI.
Okay. So if we take the 200 million, we should subtract 30 million, and then the other project that you proposed last month.
That falls under our debt capacity. I don't believe it's the county's general debt capacity. Is that true, Jim?
Yeah, that's correct. The intent there is those are Michigan transportation bonds, so the Act 51 road funds are pledged for that purpose first, before county full faith and credit.
But that would still come under the, okay.
Count as our debt capacity.
Well, it's actually two different
Yeah.
pots, if you will. If we do the 30, we will have remaining about 170 million available. The other potential debt service is charged towards road commission only. It's my understanding. Jim, is that correct?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct.
We have our own statutory debt capacity. No, we can do up to 20% of last year's MTF for bonds. You can do up to 50% for all borrowing, but 20% for bonds specifically.
Is that all road commissions?
That's statewide, that's state law, correct, for road commissions. And for legal purposes here, we're functioning as a department of the county, but we fall under road commission law, so to speak.
Sarah?
Is that all?
Phil?
Sarah's going to add to the conversation.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Carl.
I think I know what Julie's getting at a little bit. And,
That's really scary, Sarah.
I know, right? So last week I spent some time with, Christopher, Mike, Lenawee County and Branch County on some of this road issue, funding mechanisms. And, I think you're alluding a little bit to the capacity in which counties can borrow, and more specifically, the difference between the county road commissions that are departments of the road commission and actual road commissions. And there's a difference there, and that's, I was glad that he just said what he said on, they have their own statutory funding for certain projects, and the reason, some counties can't do what we're proposing right now is because they're not they're still their own road entity. So their borrowing power is literally like less than $1 million for some of the smaller counties neighboring us, which, doesn't get you very far in road funding. And that's one of the advantages we have now in our county road department, being a wing under the general county itself, and the borrowing power and the ability to pay back. And I just want to reiterate, we talked about the payback, Dave keeps asking about that. And one of the things that's really attractive in this situation that we're in right now is our road department does have the ability to pay back these bonds first with monies that they already get. We preferred the 15-year mark because it's better for your bond rating and, going forward. So you don't want to, we could make it a less payment that would be more comfortable, but the bond debt would be longer. And obviously, we don't want to go longer and pay more interest. So it is a big risk, but at the same time, their mandated funds are there to cover that pretty much the whole time. And the additional monies aren't really included in that, just as a safety net. So, I don't know, does that help with your borrowing power and just laying it out there, I guess? I feel like you wanted it laid out there, okay.
Is that all, Sarah?
Yep.
Carl, Commissioner Rice?
Actually, this is for the administrator. I asked this question, but just to clarify, didn't you tell me, because I sent you an email about our bonds, that we currently have borrowed approximately $22 million at this point, where, as we sit here today, didn't you tell me that?
You're referring to, I think you're referring to the tax increment financing cost of $22,000. That's the only 22 that pops in my head in regard to MCF. Remember we were talking about that? I don't know what the outstanding is off the top of my head. Jim, do you?
Not offhand, no.
Yeah.
So at this point, we have $200 million left, but we don't know how much we've actually bonded.
We have $200 million remaining. Anything else would be on top of that. So,
But we could have right now, sitting out there, $100 million, $200, you're saying?
Oh, no. Jim, what's, it's not hard to calculate.
There's two things, three things, really. You have the township debt that, the county stands behind, and then you have other debt that is being serviced by somebody else, like Lifeways has two issues. Medical care facility has an issue that we pay for, or that they pay for, that they help. So what sticks in my mind is about $50 million that in total that is ours. We have jail debt, which is ours, and we have, like I said, medical care facility, and Lifeway's two issues. So we have those that we're directly involved with. I'm not sure how much, if you add up all the township debt, how much that amounts to.
Could we possibly get
Yeah.
a breakdown of that sent to us so we as commissioners know where all the bond money is going up to this point?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Elwell?
I was just going to ask the same thing, if we can get that before our Tuesday meeting, all the bond indebtedness of the county. Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions, board? If not, I need a motion and support. This will be to send this to the full board.
I'll make the motion with a comment, and I'm not sure how I'll vote Tuesday, but I'll move it to the full board.
Support.
You have a motion and support to send this to the full board. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Passes unanimously. Thank you, both.
Thank you.
Next up, we will be on item 4E, Parks. Welcome, Jeff.
Oh, you're fine, you're fine. I've been where you're at. Welcome, thanks. So this is the second half of the Parks reorganization plan that I put before you back in May, and in essence allows us to realign the department for the future, put staff skill sets in place that will allow us to not only handle the ever-growing number of projects that are on the plate now, but also be able to begin the planning process for all of the county parks out in the townships that we have that are in desperate need. The first step we've got to do is get an inventory, a condition rating, and then ultimately begin to develop or evolve site master plans that we can put some cost estimates behind, so we know, and I can present to you all just where we are in terms of a need. Doesn't mean we can fund it all, but it's important that we know where we're at in order to move forward. And then the other important part of what this does is that at this point, we're just simply not good at all at communicating or managing customer service and really exploiting the opportunities that we have to grow a number of partners that can do events in our parks and bring people to Jackson County. And again, generally in a system like this moving forward, we would have a person who specifically would spend and dedicate almost all of their time to that kind of customer service, special events planning, and communication marketing. So I've laid it out. It is, at this point, as you can see on the spreadsheet, it is cost neutral. You can see how we get there. From a number of, well, I'm eliminating another position that doesn't really require the skill sets that we need to move forward, and using those funds to fund a substantial amount of the new positions that are being created. So I'll let you all ask me questions. You can see the org chart attempts, I hope that's helpful, to also show you how we look differently in terms of the way we deliver service also.
Discussion? Commissioner Elwell? No? Any discussion, or do I need a motion and support at this time? We have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We look forward to an awesome future.
Thank you. We're doing great. Got a good start going.
Thank you.
Next up would be item 4F, IT Department. Welcome. Welcome, Don.
Good morning. This is a request from the Information Technology Department to add 2 positions to the authorized levels of staff. The staff report indicated a number of reasons for that. I'd like to take a few moments to go over some statistics behind that. So basically, what's driving this is an increase in workload and complexity of technology. As a metric, I'm going to present to you some information on our trouble ticket systems. Our trouble ticket system actually consists of 2 different types of things. One is a help desk function where it's, oh, please change my password, I'm locked out of my computer, my mouse is broken, and projects, which are longer-term technical efforts that require planning, implementation, and coordination. So in 2015, we were averaging 516 tickets per month. By this year, as of the end of July, we were up to 565 tickets per month on average. And of those, so far this year, we've had 160 project tickets. The types of projects that we've been involved with have become more complex. Some of the kinds of things that we're looking at currently are things such as the redesign and deployment of a new website and a smartphone app, which will bring us from the late 90s to the 21st century. We're doing a pilot study with the parks to do wireless connectivity to provide capabilities to remote areas. We're looking at a massive upgrade for 911. We're doing something new with the health department in that we are in the process of planning a HIPAA security audit for them. We've implemented some new capabilities with our financial system. Recently, we brought up the Access My Government capability in cooperation with our vendor, which provides employees with the opportunity to be able to use web-based access to look at all of their payroll information and provide updates on personal information. We're looking at a new project implementing GPS capabilities for JCDOT. We've brought in some security awareness capabilities. On the technology side, we've implemented newer technologies, and these technologies are not only newer, but some of them are more complex. An example is the new website requires the implementation of something called Active Directory Federated Services, which is a very complex security model. It requires cryptographic certificates, certificate servers, and a number of things in the background in order for it to work. Another big thing that we're currently looking at is the county network. We have a number of switches, basically the core switches of the network, that will be coming end of life in the near future. As we looked at these, if we do a part-for-part replacement, replacing the current equipment with the latest model, we looked at that and found that the actual cost would be very expensive. It's currently ballparked at $300 to $400K. However, as we look at how the architecture is within the county compared to the way we use the network today, it's possible to re-architect that, and we're looking at a potential savings of well over 50% in actual equipment costs for the county. This, however, is a very long-term project as we look at our networking, study our traffic patterns, and look at the best equipment to fit the workload that is being required. And I guess with that, we're looking at two positions. One is a Windows Systems Administrator. This position is a new position to the county. It basically provides a person that provides a high-level support and knowledge of the internals of the Windows operating system. This raises the bar technologically because it requires much more complex knowledge of the internals of the servers and the desktops, and these are needed for the new technologies that we're implementing. The other is a enterprise system support specialist that provides support for our end users, both in terms of support for hardware types of issues, as well as support for application software issues. Some of these applications are very complex. For example, we have an imaging system that is being supported that is very complex. We have 911, and we have a number of other projects. But with that said, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Sure, we have questions. Commissioner Elwell.
I'm not out of tokens, right, for asking questions? Okay.
You reached your limit almost, yes.
Don, I do support what you're trying to do here, but just a couple of questions. Early on, you mentioned two things. One was 911 upgrades. What is it specifically, if you can say that is it the New World type system software for dispatch? Is that what you're talking about, or?
Yes, that's correct. Sheriff's Department is looking at an upgrade to the New World system. In reviewing the vendor specifications for that, the system has changed significantly, and it's going to require additional additional re-architecting of the New World system and how it's done internally, plus the acquisition of additional equipment, and it will make the system more complex, but it will, at the other end, at the user end, provide additional capabilities that are of interest to the Sheriff's Department.
I'll give my position on that now if I can. I think we should look at, and I've mentioned this to our administrator, a system called Clemis. It was developed by Oakland County. It's used by the municipalities on the east side of the state. Lenawee County has right now, or had up until now, the same system we have, and their people have been down here and talked to our people, and I appreciate that working together. Our Aegis/New World system is so expensive, and I think Don can tell you that, the upgrades. And I think if you were to talk to Lenawee County, you'd find that they finally got fed up with it and they're moving away from it. And it's not just the dispatch part of it, but it's the police reporting part of it that they're going to be switching to, and they're really looking forward to, and I'd like to see us do that. Because I do know how expensive Aegis New World is, and I do know how much it is for Clemis. I think it's a better system that costs a huge amount less of money, and I'm hopeful that we can at least look at that. Secondly, you had mentioned GPS and the JC dot vehicles, if I heard you right. Isn't that something that we already addressed with the new radio system that we bought them that had that element built into it?
There's, I would defer more to Christopher on the technical aspects of that. As I understand it, there are some aspects that are tied in with radio and others that may be looked at with another technology. The part that I was referencing is the part having to do with the radio and the back-end support to provide reporting via GPS and GIS interfacing, and the ability to provide some transparency of that via the website.
I'd have to look back. I think I voted no on the radio purchase, and it was sold to us on the premise of the GPS element of it. And if I remember right, I think there were two different stages to it. One was just knowing where the vehicles were, and I think another element of it would tell them when the blades were down and other things. But we've got a different product we use in law enforcement that works really well, and I don't like what we did with radios back then, but we are where we are, and I was thinking that that was all inclusive of the GPS as well. So, but I thank you for your answers.
We used 2 of my tokens there too, Dave.
Sorry, say that again.
Said we used 2 of my tokens there too.
Did you? That's good. Now, if we can just use 2 of somebody else's, we'll be in good shape.
Commissioner Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I always have extra ones, so don't worry, Dave. My concern is, and I certainly, you obviously do an excellent job at running your department, and you certainly know what you need for your department more than I do. But you obviously, at this point, as far as the funding for these 2 positions, you're hopeful of finding some creative ways to come up with the money within your department. But by reading this at this point, you don't necessarily have the funds within your department for these 2 positions, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So at this point, you'd be looking at the overall cost in regards to these 2 FTEs, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the next question is, I know you're going to have Kathy leaving sometime in a few months, and I believe you have a retirement. Is that correct?
Well, Kathy will be leaving. We have another person that's out on medical leave.
Okay. So, and that doesn't involve those two positions at all. This is totally 2 extras.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you.
Further questions or discussion?
I would move the request.
Have a motion and support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
It can be hard to afford, but harder to not do it. So,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
you bet. You're doing a great job. Thank you. Item 4G, we have finance. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now that we're halfway through the year, our annual budget benchmark is 50%. The three-year average of expenditures is slightly below that, 49.8%. Our actual results through June are 48%, a little bit below that, so we're underspending, which is the good news. And also, if I bring your attention to page 4, and that's the general fund graphs, if we look at the revenue side through June, we've caught up there, and our actual revenue is a tad above average at this point. So be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Board? Thank you. Great report, as always. Thank you. Moving on to item 5A. Need motion support to pay the claims? Have motion support. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Thank you. Passes unanimously. We don't have any other minutes to report on. Reporting schedule for September is, it went away. I think it's finance and somebody else, I think treasurer. All right, I'll be done with that. Public comment, item 6. Short on public. Committee member comments.
This is where we'd address training we'd want to go to, maybe, or no?
Yes, sir. Committee comments.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Board.